course through the, but it was beautiful. I mean, the
Association and
really pretty.
Oh, yeah.
school superintendents.
Hong Kong is awesome. I want to go back one time.
Yeah, see, I haven't been down there. Everybody says
That's what I was thinking. Last thing you want to do is be like,
kind of more advanced.
what's going on?
A lot more instrumentation.
No,
Yeah, I was packed into a train with like a small train card, like 500
actually, I was
people
spare on top of that.
all over me. It's always,
By the tallest so you can see over everybody.
I could see other Western ones different one because they're. I took a selfie with all those people. They weren't real thrilled. I was just trying to get to wherever they're going.
No, they're not going to. That's okay.
It's something you just didn't be anywhere in the Midwest.
Yeah.
For its distance and accuracy.
Not that I would want to.
No, right.
Let's do this.
All right. Good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. We're going to call Gardner City Council to order and invite everybody in attendance to stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. Thanks, everybody, for coming. We do not have a public hearing this evening, so we're going to move right on. No presentations either. We're going to move right on to public comments. Public comments are a time for members of the public to make comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing. If you'd like to make a public comment, please step to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and be heard.
Roger Thomas, 300 North Persimmon Drive, Topeka, Kansas, 66061. Members of the council, Mr. Freeman, I want to thank you very much for getting that porta potty onto the Gardner Airport. Believe me, it really came in handy this past season. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Roger.
Thank you, Roger. Anyone else? With no one coming forward, we're going to move on. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Do I have a council member that would like to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to remove items 9 through 11 from the consent agenda.
So 9, 10, and 11.
Yes.
Anyone else? I'd entertain a motion to approve the rest of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
A motion, Harrison, second, shoot that we approve the consent agenda, items 1 through 8 and 12 and 13. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstention? Those items on the consent agenda pass. I would like to point out that we also approved a new member of the ADA Advisory Committee, a Gardner U graduate, Dennis Liss. Thanks for coming again this evening, and thank you for joining us on the ADA Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Dennis.
Appreciate it. Items 9, 10, and 11. Councilmember Shute.
Yes, I'd like to try to consider all three of these at once. Just one, 3 votes, but I wanted to discuss all 3 of these from the standpoint of the funds that these particular expenditures are coming out of. I know we had discussed using utility funds for the utility vehicles. I just wanted to check the status of the current $300,000 pool that we have for purchasing of fleet vehicles for this year.
I could look up exactly, but you've spent, there was about 120,000-ish left for the general fund, and the others were from utility funds.
Okay. How many of these vehicles are coming out of the utility funds? Are all these coming out?
two of them were parked, let me look at the other one. Right, well, they're public works, so they're all general fund.
Okay, and how much is this total here? For all three of these items?
Mm.
My concern is that we're about to blow through our entire annual budget for that item, the 300,000, and we're only in May.
All of these vehicles were in the budget already.
They were in the budget for
They
the
were as
existing,
placeholders.
for the placeholders for
Right.
those departments.
Right.
All right, so, again,
As placeholders, not,
As
can you hear me?
as placeholders, not necessarily per vehicle. There was enough money in the placeholder left in the general fund because I did already check that.
okay. So after this, after these purchases, just to be clear, we'll still have 120,000-ish? We will not.
This pretty much took care of it.
So, and so we're not having any more vehicles being approved for this year under this year's budget?
I am unaware of anyone else asking for any more vehicles this year, although I will remind council that at the March 20th presentation that Matt Wolf gave, he said you needed more like $400,000 to $500,000 each year. So I will
Correct.
not promise, I can't speak for any of the directors, but that something won't come along that's broken or can't be replaced, or like I had one taken out of service that I didn't know was coming. So I was going to bring that back to you at the next meeting. How much more, given that you're still behind the curve, did you want to put into this year or next year's budget?
I was just going to ask you, so after this action tonight, any future vehicle purchases are going to have to be done as an adjustment to this year's budget?
Not
Work them out of
necessarily.
the fund.
Yeah,
Right.
we're working out the general
Not,
fund.
when you say an adjustment from the budget, generally speaking, I don't give a formal adjustment to the budget because we budget fund balance, and therefore we don't need to.
Sure.
But all vehicles already come to the governing body for approval because they're all nearly
Correct.
always above the city administrator's purchasing authority.
Correct.
So if your question is, are all these within the 300,000 plus utility funds exemption, the answer is very close.
We're real close to the limit. Okay. Any other questions from anybody else? All right. Thanks, Laura. I just wanted to make sure we were going forward, we were completely eyes wide open on this, that we're going to be taking extra money that's not budgeted
Well,
to purchase any other
So
vehicles.
make sure I'm clear, your staff is very aware of what the placeholder was. So you're saying you're saying to the governing body,
To the governing
anything in
body
addition is
and the
above and
public.
beyond what we already budgeted for 17?
Correct.
Okay. And
That's fine
next
now.
meeting, I was going to bring to you, and what are we doing for 18? Question mark. So while we're on the topic, remembering that you were asked for more earlier this year.
All right, thank you.
All right. I'd entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items 9, 10, and 11.
So moved.
Second?
You got it.
Motion Melton, second Harrison, that we approve consent agenda items 9, 10, and 11. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstention? Consent agenda is passed. New business item number 1. Consider adopting a resolution authorizing and providing for the calling of a bond election in the city of Gardner, Kansas for the purpose of submitting to the qualified electors of the city the question of issuing general obligation bonds of the city and for giving notice of the bond election. Laura?
Okay, as a review on how we, is this when you finish the discussion? As a review on how we got to where we are, so for anybody listening or anybody in the audience,
We had in 2013 a CIP tour of city facilities, and one of the items that was spotlighted was the inadequate police department. And then there was a study presented in 2015 by Trainer Architects, and at council's direction, they came out and revised the construction numbers and came up with 13.25 million as the current estimate. And then that was provided to financial advisor Kimmel, who roughly calculated he didn't roughly, he calculated $950,000 average for the principal and interest payments on a facility such as that for 20 years. We'll also remind you that council has directed many times that they want to be able to use this building flexibly, and there is not a great deal, but there is some flexible space within this building that could from time to time be used for community purposes, which requires us to provide this to a vote of the electorate under a different statute than the tax lid we talked about before. So with that being said, the governing body also directed the development of very clear language for the ballot. So what you have before you in the resolution and the attached notice of election is the language that Bond Counsel Ellsworth, City Attorney Dank, and I came up with. It is, the ballot language itself is boilerplate. As I wrote in here, Bond Counsel Ellsworth advises, in order to not invalidate your election, that's why that language is boilerplate, but why that additional language was created for the notice of election. That's to be published twice before the election. So I did also note that your approval of this resolution also approves the notice of election in substantially the same form. I will not get the official assessed valuation until June 15th. So I will fine tune these calculations that are in the notice of election before it's first published in the paper on June 21st and then again on June 28th, and that's within the time frame required. So they may change a little. I don't expect it to change a lot. Also, I did note that for the election office multiplied by the turnout at the last election, it could be as much as $50,000 for this election. I doubt that, but there's really no way to know. It's all about turnout at $4 a person. So with that, you have a city attorney and a bond counsel and whatever you'd like to do from here.
Wait. Public comments, yeah. Anyone in present wish to make public comment? New business item number 1. No one coming forward. Lee, you looked like you were nodding like you wanted to get in, so I was looking your way first.
Real quick, I just have a concern about the language and the question. It says to be used as a law enforcement center and community building. I'm concerned about that because from what I read before this, we were talking about a law enforcement center that has some facilities within it that may be used, may possibly be used for other than law enforcement duty, things like recreation or whatever. So I'm a little bit concerned that we're not being completely transparent there with that. We're saying community building as if this is a community building and not a law enforcement center. It's a law enforcement facility with some community application possibly built in addition to law enforcement.
The good news is I talked to Bond Counsel Ellsworth this morning and said, when I'm reading this again, I suspect the governing body will say, this says, and so here's Tyler, completely prepared.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. True story. True story. We discussed that this morning. We can certainly look at trying to clarify that ballot language if that is a concern. And actually, I wrote out here sort of an option that we could entertain. Instead of describing this as constructing and equipping a facility on a site owned by the city to be used as a law enforcement center and community building, we could describe it as to be owned by the city to be used for law enforcement and community purposes. But I'm not sure that that gets to your question, which is I think that the community use is sort of a possibility and not a given. Is that fair?
Right. My concern is I don't want anyone that votes for this to think that they're getting a community center.
Right, and that's exactly what we said.
Right.
Well, and actually, I've got some language questions on this, and do you mind?
Sure.
Okay. First off, law enforcement center, we've been talking about this as if it was going to be a justice center for a while. Additionally, I think most people in the community have gotten a sense at some point or other that part of the reason that we really need this is the deteriorating condition of our police department headquarters. So I was wondering, should we maybe be saying to be used as a justice center housing, the Gardner Police Department, municipal court functions, and for community purposes,
For other community purposes,
and for other community purposes.
but not a community center.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful clarification, certainly.
But yeah, I wanted to say Justice Center because that's what we've been calling it. I want to make sure that they understand that the police department headquarters is going to go in there and that the
Right.
municipal
Yeah.
court's going in there.
No, I don't think that does. I
So
don't think that does.
what we're discussing on whether or not that negates any of the boilerplate he was worried about. So
That's right. Altering the description of the use of the building as just discussed and proposed, I think is fine. And we can certainly come back with language that makes clear that it's not a law enforcement center and a community center. It's as discussed.
do you want
Okay.
to write it down here tonight?
I do.
I'd rather.
Can we have them approve it tonight?
Okay.
Yes, we're ready?
We can amend it on the fly, but I'm taking notes.
Okay.
Okay. Mayor, would you repeat the language that you just suggested, please?
Sure, I said to be used as a justice center to house police department HQ, municipal court, and other community purposes.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
Ryan?
But yeah, I butted in on Lee, so.
I had one more. I got an email from Heath Freeman, I think we all got it,
Yep.
asking, should this be scheduled for the November general election instead of the primary election? And can we save money that way?
We can't do that because the only way we get around the budget law, the August 25th date for the budget law, is if you have a tax election, and this is not a tax election, so the election has to occur before a budget submission date.
Well, that explains it.
That explains it. Thank you.
I think we talked about that before,
We
too.
did.
Yeah,
did.
But I wanted to make sure too,
Yeah.
that we got that covered.
Christine?
Kind of just tagging on along that, if we're going to pay up to $50,000 for this anyhow, and we're going to put this on an August ballot, which I can't imagine the voter turnout is going to be significant, especially if we don't have anything on there, are we better off just doing a mail-in special election from a cost perspective? I mean, I guess what I don't want is 150 people to show up in August and vote for this if the cost is going to be pretty much the same if we do a mail-in ballot.
What was our turnout last time we had the mail-in election for the infrastructure tax?
Pretty good.
It was over 1,000, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Which is way more than.
way more. I mean,
Is,
About 30, 35,000.
Yeah, so if we're gonna spend maybe 50,
yeah, well, I mean, we had 4,000 or 5,000 respond to that.
Yeah, so
Right.
it's a timing problem. I'd rather this be a
Well, it says
mail-in
so.
election because
Get a lot of
Hi.
turnout.
your bond counsel has
Right.
something to say?
The issue is it's a timing problem. We have to get this election completed prior to August 25th so that you can complete your budget, which includes the levy for this debt service.
But a mail ballot election wouldn't allow us to do
we
that?
wouldn't have time to get that.
You could, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, I just know that, and I honestly didn't look at this because we were moving forward with the primary, but there are also timing issues with special mail ballot elections, proximate in time to primary and general elections, and there are prohibitions within certain windows on either side of that. But we could certainly investigate it with the election office.
I mean, I guess from my perspective, I'm fine with August, but if we could do something that is gonna be similar in cost and get a chance of getting more turnout, I would prefer that, if it's an option.
Well, and I kind of wonder if maybe what we do to drive the turnout is have a town hall like we did last time, get a little bit of word out, maybe get some of those wonderful pictures of the police station, put them, on the social media, provide them to the news outlets.
Maybe
whatnot.
have the town hall at the police station.
That's not, let's talk about that. We could set up chairs in the bay.
We could do that
Yeah. Well,
and give people a tour.
yeah. Yeah, I don't see anybody shaking their head no.
It's better than pictures.
Well, parking.
Parking might be an issue.
Park across the street.
The shuttle bus.
I think we have the 2-hour parking over at Ground House. Or the shuttle bus.
Maybe. Okay. Well, further discussion, but yes.
Okay.
I think that's the way we can. But yeah, I think that, if we want voter turnout, I think it's going to be incumbent on the members of the
does the
governing
notice of
body to
election say
say,
that it has to
you
be
need to get out and vote on
Does
this,
a notice of election?
Yep.
and why.
So can we change that on the fly as well? Okay.
Rich, you got any
Yeah,
questions?
I still am very nervous about the outlay of funds here. I mean, the amount, of what it is, and the city paying for it long-term if something happens. I see this as a potential problem, and I also don't like absolutes, and I feel that the single question on there is an absolute, do you want this or not? I really think we ought to look at a secondary option to say, would you rather have, do you want this for 13 million? Or do you want just to build it in phases? I think the public deserves the right to vote on that and give us some direction up here. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I think that we are setting ourselves up for failure when we have this kind of outlay and we are banking on what's going to happen in the future to pay for it. I mean, there's some of it that we can pay for, I get that, but there's a lot more out there that for the next 20 years that I really worry about. And I'd like to see what you guys think about putting another question on there. As far as I know, we got plenty of paper.
It's gone on for a number of years now. There's been study and investment done. I think this is building for the future. I'm not in favor of it, but you're the ones that are going to vote on the resolution.
Well, what would be the, I've seen multiple questions on the same subject before in ballot issues. It does get a little dicey though, doesn't it, from the standpoint of wording and how you would do that?
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
What if both were to pass, for example?
Right.
Kind of crazy.
well, you're not, Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, but just because a bond question passes, that just gives them the authority to go ahead and issue the bonds. You're not compelled to do so.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah. So if you have multiple questions, that just gives you authority
Sure.
to then adopt by ordinance and issue bonds. You're not, in fact, compelled to do so. I'll be honest, I have dealt with a situation, I have not dealt with a situation where it's, well, option A, option B. So
Right.
that's unusual for
They will always speak.
Okay, well, let's go back. Remembering that you're issuing, we have to decide by August 25th whether you're levying taxes or reducing the mill. That's what this is. The whole timeline is really about. If you don't hit the August 25th, well, you don't have a choice. We will be approving a budget August 21st, one way or the other. It passed or it didn't, or you decided not to do it or you didn't. But either way, mechanically, this is about levying taxes. So you have to either have debt to levy against, or you're going to reduce the mills. Because now, if you don't do this, now you're back under the tax lid law, and we'll be reducing our valuation that we got for 11%. So you'll be reducing your mills by about roughly two and a little more.
So I think what you're saying is, with either option, you've got to decide which one you're going to build for August 25th, and either decide
Yes,
today
right.
or decide after the August 2nd election.
And if you decide, if we're not done, if the decision isn't made when we pass the budget August 21st, then the default decision is you're going to reduce mills.
Yep.
Well, then you've gone through the election for nothing.
Right.
Correct. Which I don't think we want to do that either.
Well,
so.
if the ballot question fails, we're still reducing mills.
Right. Well, and if I, okay, so if I.
So it's not for nothing.
If I understand correctly, between the quarter, what we're anticipating from the quarter cent sales tax, what we're anticipating from the increase in valuation, we're still about $150,000 a year short right now?
No, what I wrote, it's all in this additional information and then notice of election. Your Justice Center as it stands today is equivalent to about 2.71 mils. That's debt service less the quarter cent sales tax equals 2.71, roughly.
Right.
So that's how much it is. That was your question. Because when I said you're a little short, well, okay, I told you before 2, so you're the not quite one more,
Right.
0.7.
0.7-ish. I don't have the latest and greatest assessed valuations until June 15th, but it'll be roughly that.
Is there anybody else? And Rich, I would suggest that if you had suggested language prepared coming in, maybe it'd make the conversation easier. But
Well, that's why I'm here with the attorney. That's why I waited.
Can I just offer one more thing on that? So what Laura was getting to earlier as well is if we're looking at a second option, which I don't think Trainer hasn't run scenarios for a second option. If you're looking for a second option, then we've got to pass a resolution setting a question before June 1. So that's the next meeting. And you've got to know how much you're bonding for that second option by then. Okay? And then whatever question passes, then Laura's going to want action which ensures that we're going to incur that debt next year before August 25th.
yes.
So you, in essence, will have had to have worked up, priced out that second option probably by next meeting, or you call a special meeting before June 1st. And then you'll have to have decided after the alternate questions are posed, which option you're going to go with. And then pass the ordinance that we were talking about, or at least a notice of intent, right?
Right.
Before August 25th. So those are kind of the timelines.
So I guess my question would be, what would be the goal of having multiple questions on the ballot?
From my perspective, just to let the citizens be aware that you have 3 options. You can go with nothing, you can go with the full-blown thing, and knowing that the second one's there because here's what the reality is: if we don't make the expected revenues we're going to get, everybody's, taxes are going up to offset it. So, that's the reality of our world, and they've already gone up for county for, we have the extra sales tax on, for the roads, and so it's just, I really want to be open and honest with the public and let them know that if we go do all this debt and something happens, we got to make up that loss somewhere.
Okay, so let me try to address your question,
Sure.
Rich, or just clarify anyway. You believe that the police station has the highest priority,
Correct.
and you want to have a discussion on just doing the police station, and then doing the municipal court at some other date.
Right. When we look and can go, hey, look, we know some of these things came in, the, financials from all the different things that are building around here, and we see that, hey, look, we know we're getting this money. Now we're not hypothesizing what we're getting.
But understanding the present value and understanding, that the increased cost of construction are going to be happening.
I understand.
It might end up costing $5-6 million more.
That would double the cost of it if it cost $5 or $6 million more, really.
No, it's 11, it's 13 million now.
But if it's 8 million, go ahead.
Michael Kramer?
It's my understanding too that as far as a bond question and issue, and you guys can correct me, that it's only the community space that allows you to have the election.
That's correct.
No, we can have election
No,
for anything.
no, go ahead. No, not just, yeah, go ahead.
You-
He's the
you-
attorney.
You have very limited authority to have advisory elections. The election that we're discussing here relates specifically to the community use, and that's the statute, KSA 12-1737 provides that.
Okay.
For that community use, you have to have an election.
But I mean, if you don't have community use, you can still have an election, can you not?
I'm sorry, say that again?
If you don't have community use, you can still have an election. could you
No,
not?
no, it's not that clear. You can't
Not for the
have-
purpose of general obligation funds.
Right, you can't just have an advisory election yeah.
Okay.
So in a sense, you need to have this as part of the election.
That's right. This sort of all came together. It was a confluence of the tax lid.
I can't hear you really well.
This was sort of a confluence of many different factors. It was the tax lid, it was the increased valuation, it was the fact that you were looking at a law enforcement or justice center and it had this potential community flex space, sort of that all coalesced to provide you the opportunity to have this election and to have it now.
So originally, council's direction was flexible space. You purchased your property under flexible space.
Correct.
And then when the in-basket exercise, where we started out with, now you have money, and you have the 1/4-cent sales tax, and I can get you 3/4 of the way there for the first 10 years, still a true statement. Then it turned into, you can't just have, and you made it clear that you wanted the voters to decide.
Yes.
So that's what bond counsel is saying, is that's the perfect storm that got you to this point. If you pull out the flexible space, now you do not have the authority to delegate this decision to the voters. You decide. And you won't have flexible space.
And if we've got a courtroom and the courtroom's not in use and we use that for other community purposes, that qualifies as flexible space.
That's right.
Community purposes.
That's right.
Christina?
Yeah, I have a question. So the verbiage says, not to exceed 13 million. Okay. So can you walk me through, kind of to Rich's point, if we decided that we want to phase this in, right? So first year, we're going to do the police department, and then let's just say that's $6 million. And then we're going to phase in some additional things. It's all in the plan, but do we have to take on the 13 million all at once, or are there options to where we can kind of phase this in?
I think there are options. I would request additional time to take a look at specifically what those options are, because I wouldn't want to give you incorrect advice on that point. But yeah, that's certainly something we could take a look at.
Except for the mechanical part, where now you're back to trying to match your revenues against your debt service, and so you're going to lose whatever part you don't put in from the market valuation. I could guarantee we could keep it all if you issued it all. If you do it in phases, now I'm only good for 2018. And this is the difference between attorneys and the people who have to grind the sausage. So sausage grinder says, okay, but you're going to lose X of whatever mill value.
Okay, so let me ask.
You could do, Bruce, I'm sure will tell you this, you could do whatever phase you're going to do and shorten the time frame to enable you to keep the entirety of it. And if you do a second phase, couldn't you refinance for a longer?
You're getting a whole lot of variables into calling elections and additional interest rates.
I think the key here is it's not to exceed. So we could decide, I mean, and kind of to Chris's point, if we said, listen, as we're going through this and as we're getting community input, maybe after, it passes, and we start getting community input into the actual plans and what that looks like, we could decide to scale that back and have something less than $13 million based on, different various options.
Whatever you decide has to be decided by August 25th, because that's the deadline by which they create your tax levy. So there's no way to go back and say, oh, we need more, can we have more until the next budget year? Or, oops, we over levied and we need to give you all a refund, because there isn't any way to do that. And there's no provision for that.
And
I was just saying, so we can go ahead and pass this resolution to put this question to the voters as it is, and then if it passes, we can then take a phased approach if we all decide to do that. Is that? But not without creating Laura big headaches.
I can't, you can't get the levy.
We can't get them.
Yeah, well, first, before we get too far afield, I do want to point out that one of the reasons that we need a justice center is not just the condition of the police department. Just within the last year, we've hired a second prosecutor for municipal court. Judge Lewis, I mean, if I thought we were going to need backup here, I might have asked the public defender or the prosecutor to come in, or Judge Lewis to come in and talk about the crowds. And I talked with the fire chief, and he says that we're reaching capacity, and heaven forbid we end up getting cited by our own fire district for capacity problems inside City Hall. And I think that the courts are running later. We are inconveniencing our citizens to a great deal. We're inconveniencing city staff. And people that are coming in to, I don't know, go over to the Business and Economic Development Department window on a afternoon with basically everybody here talking to their attorneys, waiting for their time to be in front of the judge. We've got to consider that we don't need to be holding municipal court in council chambers any longer, and that's really kind of a now thing as well. Chief, you've been over here for municipal court, haven't you? Is that you think this is optimum for anybody the way it's currently operating?
No, I think we're beyond capacity now. I think we're beyond the capacity of this space already.
I don't, I'm not, just for the record, I'm not questioning that we need both.
No, me neither.
I'm only trying to move this particular issue forward so we can vote on it and get on to the next thing.
Yeah.
This issue is just, should we pass the general obligation bond with this question, yes or no?
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, as long as we tweak the language like you'd ask for it to be done, then I think I'm good with it the way it is. And as long as we have, we can talk about later the possibility of a phased approach.
I just want to make sure we don't hog-tie either us or future governing bodies with things that cannot be paid for by putting something in that we can't afford. That's my main concern. And as long as we address that, I'm fine with it.
I think we've already gone down the road of mortgaging the good faith and credit of the people of the city on anticipated future growth that didn't happen.
Well, I'm just making sure we don't forget.
And I totally understand that. And it still bothers me that even with this bond issue, even with this question, we're not completely whole when it comes to the budget numbers. So, are we looking at a mill levy increase even this year because of the fact we don't have the full, funding capacity this year? That concerns me. Yes?
No, we do.
So I heard part of what you were saying because I was thinking about what we were just talking about.
Yep.
Did you say that you're worried about, so when I told you were some short, I have already played in the budget, and so the total mill levy does not change.
Okay, we don't want that.
But I can move a little piece of the general fund to cover what you're short here, which is what I've already done.
But next year, we may be in this same
I don't,
situation.
So I don't know if it'll make you feel better or worse that anytime you issue general obligation debt and something goes awry in the economy, you're still obligated to pay your debt.
Correct.
And that's whether you're issuing it for $1 million, $6 million, $60 million. It doesn't matter what we built or bought. If you did it with general obligation bonds, you're in.
Well, and if we're worried about whether or not, I mean, if, let's say we're not able to pay, we've got enough debt capacity that's rolling off. I mean, if we want to say, well, we don't want to pay for expected future growth and use that money that we were probably going to use for future growth to pay the bond and interest on the Justice Center because we've got that obligation already and we don't want to see taxes go up for our citizens,
Correct.
then we can do that. But
Well, it becomes an exercise in priorities at that point.
yeah.
That is true. You are a great deal. I think it's 70% of your debt's dropping off in the next 10 years or more. So you have choices, and as I said before, Gardner 20 years from now is not Gardner 20 years ago to where we are now, and Gardner 20 years from today to 20 years at the end. You have the first 10 years in your sales tax. That is nice to have. That's a big chunk of this. So your decision, your direction, we already wrote down the new language you want. Tyler's got it, city attorney's got it. And as I said, the notice of election piece changes a little bit when I get my new valuation, but it won't change significantly. Moving up your total mills, I can tell you that I've gotten you through many a rabbit, so they won't change. Total mill will not change. And bond counsel does mention that if you were to get into a future governing body, he says you can always restructure debt.
Yes.
So that's a possibility.
Might be at a higher
I think
rate.
we've shown that time and again.
We've shown that a time or two, but you can do it not just because it's, yay, we're saving money, but, oh, we need to do something different.
Sure.
Right.
All right. Ryan, do you have the updated language?
I do.
Would you be able to read that out for the record?
The new ballot language question, as I have it, is, shall the city of Gardner, Kansas issue general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $13,725,
Man, that would be nice.
$13,725,000 to pay the cost of constructing and equipping a facility on a site owned by the city to be used as a justice center to house police department, municipal court, and other community purposes, together with all things necessary and incidental thereto, all pursuant to the provisions of KSA 12-1736 et sec. and KSA 10-101 et sec.
We're good with that language?
Yes.
Okay.
And-
Anybody got any other further questions or comments?
I just want to double check, you realize you are also approving the notice of election. That's part of this approval. Okay.
And we'll have that discussion as to whether it'll be a mail ballot or in-person election.
Where did we leave off with the mail ballot?
I was going to check with the election office.
I don't think it's gonna cost more than the $50,000 that they.
Well, no, that's-
But it's a question of time.
I understand that. I just want to know that
But
that's still,
by the next council meeting, you'd be able to tell us that for sure, right, Ryan?
Laura, you okay if we thought to the next?
Actually, because I'm very proactive, we'll make it by the skin of our teeth if we answer that question at the next meeting.
you're awesome.
All right. Anything-
But August 21st is your
Yes.
deadline.
Oh, no.
That is the
We
deadline.
understand that. We understand that.
Anyone else?
We're driving turnout, right? Yep.
Anyone else?
Okay.
Otherwise, we've got a resolution number 1967. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Harrison, second Moore, that we adopt resolution number 1967.
Hold on. This resolution in section 3 calls for
Oh,
Yeah.
the election to be held during the
Yep.
primary. I think we're going to bring the issue back to you at the next mountain meeting
so,
with options as to mail ballot versus the primary.
Yeah, we'd have to do
That
that.
is an option.
if it's an option. So it could be this exact same thing on August 1st next meeting. We talked about this actually several times, and I didn't think the mail ballot election worked. I thought it was this because they told you it was this.
No.
Okay.
It was this because that was the express preference.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we've got a motion and a second. If we decide we want
I
to,
have to withdraw the motion.
well, yes, further public comment if somebody wants to, further question if somebody wants to make a,
The motion maker has the authority to withdraw their motion.
Yeah.
That's by Robert's rules.
Can I withdraw my second?
Now, hold on a minute. So can we not just, I mean, can we not amend the motion to say either primary or mail-in ballot?
I think the problem is when you adopt the resolutions, it provides notice as to the.
How it's gonna be.
Yeah.
How it's gonna be and the date.
And it changes the ballot language as well, because then you need to cite that statute as well. So there are a few different changes that are affected by that.
So I can withdraw my motion,
Yes.
and then this will be brought back on May 15th.
Oh, you have to make a motion to table if that's the case.
I move we table new business item number
Second.
1.
motion Harrison, second Winters, that we table new business item number 1 until the next regularly scheduled city council meeting.
But the only piece left is when.
When?
And
Yes.
by what, by what thing? Okay, so you were done with the language?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? New business item 1 is tabled until next meeting. New business item number 2, consider a request for a waiver of distance limitation to allow for the sale of cereal malt beverages within 200 feet of a school, church, or library during the Festival on the Trails event to be held June 9th and 10th, 2017. Well, Kimberly Garrison at the podium. Good evening.
Hi. So this is the same agenda item as we have had the past few years for doing a request to waive the distance limitation for the Festival on the Trails because it is within 200 feet of Gardner Elementary. The church located behind us here in the library. The Festival on the Trails is requested to be held back here on June 9th and 10th of this year.
Okay. Public comment regarding new business item number 2. I know we've got members of the committee that are here, but I think they're just looking hopeful that this will go as previous years has gone. So, no public comments or questions regarding new business item number 2. And this is, new business item number 2. They're looking for a waiver. New business item number 3, we're going to do a public hearing. New business item number 4, general retailer. So I don't want to spend, if we've got questions, let's talk about them now. All right, well, I'd entertain a motion for new business item number 2.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Shute, second Melton, that we approve a request for a waiver of distance limitation to allow for the sale of cereal malt beverages within 200 feet of a school, church, or library during the Festival on the Trails event to be held June 9th and 10th, 2017. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? New business item number 2 passes. New business item number 3 is consider holding a public hearing for the purpose of receiving comments to request for a waiver of distance limitation to allow for the sale of cereal malt beverages within 200 feet of a church, school, or library during the Festival on the Trails event to be held on June 9, 2017. I would entertain a motion to...
So moved.
Second. I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing. Motion to him over there, Moore, second winners, that we open the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? The public hearing is open. Members of the public wishing to make comments regarding new business item number 3? With no one coming forward, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Shute, second Melton, that we close the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? The public hearing is closed. New business item number 4. Consider approving a general retailer special event permit allowing for the Festival on the Trails Association to sell cereal malt beverages for consumption on the premises for their event to be held June 9th and 10th, 2017. Kimberly.
So, as previous years, we are required to issue a special events permits for the sale of C&B at this event. The Festival of the Trails has turned in their application for their C&B license, and it has been sent and approved and returned from the police department as well. So just another housekeeping item for them to be able to have their beer garden, which in the site plan indicates it's in the same place as previous years.
Okay. Public comments, new business item number 4. No one coming forward. I would point out, I think that next year it'll be hard beer up to 6.0 because of legislation that was just passed.
This is really just, Laura Gurley type of housekeeping, is it not?
Yep.
Actually said it, I kind of enjoyed that.
Yeah, housekeeping. I love it.
So, questions, comments? I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Shute, second Moore, that we approve a general retailer special event permit allowing the Festival on the Trails Association to sell cereal malt beverages for consumption on the premises for the Festival on the Trails event to be held on June 9th and 10th, 2017. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention? New business item number 4 passes, and my guess is a row of the audience is probably going to leave. No, maybe not. Maybe they want to hear the fireworks discussion.
Oh, this will be fun.
New business item number 5. Consider approving a resolution establishing the dates and times the discharge of fireworks will be allowed within the city limits of Gardner for the observance of the July 4th holiday. Chief.
Good evening. On January 3rd of this year, the City Council amended the fireworks ordinance, giving yourselves the flexibility to establish the dates and times that the discharge of fireworks would be allowed within the city limits of Gardner. We're a couple months out now, and so it's time to address that issue. I did draft a resolution, and I noted that I changed a couple of the times. The previous ordinance allowed fireworks to be discharged on the 3rd and 4th till midnight, taking into consideration some of the complaints with work days and things of that nature. That's kind of what guided me to establish the times for Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. There's also consideration given to including Friday, but there's such a thing as too much of a good thing. So I knew that was coming. So, but the staff's recommendation is that the resolution allowing fireworks on Saturday, July 1st through the 4th be approved as drafted.
Okay. Public comments regarding new business item number 5. No one coming forward. Questions for Chief Pruding regarding resolution number 1968? Comments?
Just excited about the possibilities.
I did have a question about enforcement. We talked about this last year.
Sure.
From the standpoint of some of the right-of-way, the people who are shooting off fireworks in the right-of-way or blocking off streets or things like that.
Yes, and
We're much better prepared now than we were.
Yes, and we have not, I've alerted my staff to alert me when those requests come in. We haven't gotten any to this point, but absolutely, we're going to limit the number. I was actually going to consult the advisory committee when those come in, so we can look not only at the map, but, consider what the larger repercussions are of blocking off the street, so.
Do you guys think it would be a good idea for us to have maybe Danica start putting out the idea that that's not anything we're going to do for the 4th of July? That way at least it's out there for a couple months beforehand, not blocking off the street.
Proactive communication is always best.
Right. So,
Yep.
I'll say, just from my opinion, I mean, the 2 days last year, the first night, and I know it was the first night we could do fireworks, but was yeah. But I mean, I did feel for people because it was loud 2 nights in a row, and so I'll be curious to see how this does with 4 nights.
Yes.
I think maybe it'll spread things out a bit. It won't be quite as ostentatious, each night. So, except for the 4th, of course. But I'll be curious to see how this goes and plan for next year. So.
I'm wondering what are we going to do differently from a law enforcement perspective on the Sunday night? I mean, how are you going to shut it down at 10 p.m.?
With the number of officers we have, I mean, we're just going to respond to complaints. I mean, we really don't have the capacity to, it's no different than any other city in the metro. We don't have the capacity to shut it down. If we get a call for service, then we'll respond.
Because if I'm not mistaken, this city bought somewhere in the neighborhood of $800,000 worth of fireworks last year and shot it off in 2 days.
I think Rich saw shut off about a quarter of that.
no comment.
But yeah, I know what you're saying. I mean, and the fact that we have double the applications for stands now than we had last year.
Sir.
I mean,
Well, maybe this might
Which
be
is doing
something
the
that's, when we're doing I don't know how many people we've got using the Textcaster that the city now has access to. I don't know how often the police departments make use of it, but it's certainly a handy device, and everybody it seems just about everybody's got a cell phone. If we could dial up the number of people that are using Textcaster and use that, reminding people at the appropriate shut-off time.
Yeah, it seems like we're going to need to have a pretty aggressive information campaign to make sure that those times are at least communicated.
Well, we've got the right people, and we can, the police department Facebook page, for instance, has more followers than any of the other city Facebook pages does. That would be a good spot for it, as
That
well
and
as
picking up the trash was another one. That was
Sure.
a big. That was probably the number one complaint that I heard last year was
Yeah.
the debris.
disposal.
Well, I had a couple of the overhead shelves fall close to my wife in the backyard last year, so she was not in favor of those.
Wait.
No.
You're supposed to stand clear when you shoot those
Unless
off.
you were over at the Greenway shooting them off, I don't think it was you. Anybody else have a question? Because I have one.
Sure.
Monday, it's 11 p.m. It's like midnight on Saturday, 10 o'clock on Sunday, 11 o'clock on Monday and Tuesday. Not Tuesday's the 4th. It's the national holiday. It's Independence Day. Is there a reason that we went 11 instead of 10 on the Monday?
No, other than just consideration of a lot of people being off on the 4th. Now, I know everybody's not off on the 4th. I mean, I have no objection to shutting it off at 10. It'll just be difficult, more difficult. I tried to insert some realism on what our capabilities are when I establish these times. So,
Well, and most people are going to be off on the 4th. Other questions?
I was actually going to say, why not go to midnight on the 3rd? and, and
Here's one of the things, if the population understands what the times are. I mean, last year, even though some parts of the city might have sounded, well, the south side maybe, sounded like a war zone, at the prescribed hour, typically it just, it just stopped. It stopped. So as long as we have the hours somewhat consistent, so that people don't have to think, oh, is it 11 o'clock tonight, or is it 10 o'clock tonight, or is it midnight tonight? Then I think it'll be a little bit better, a little easier to enforce. I mean, I like the hours the way they are set up here because we know that on Monday, Tuesday, it's 11 o'clock. I mean, so maybe Sunday should be 11 as well, and that way we have it consistent across all 3 nights. But the more consistency we have, the easier it will be for people to remember.
And that's one less excuse they can throw out to the officers.
Yeah. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, one complaint I heard last time was that the sun doesn't go down until well after 9 p.m. So it's difficult to see the fireworks in the.
It is 10 a.m. till
Yeah. So, for what it's worth.
Anybody want to change the language, or are we happy with the way 1968 is set up?
I think it's a good compromise.
We'll try it.
I'd entertain a motion on resolution 1968.
So, second.
Motion Melton, second Moore, that we approve resolution number 196A establishing the dates and times when the discharge of fireworks will be allowed within the city of Gardner for the observance of the 2017 July 4th holiday. City Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Harrison?
No.
Councilmember Winters?
Yes.
Councilmember Moore?
Yes.
Councilmember Melton?
Yes.
Councilmember Shute?
Yes.
1968 passes.
I have a follow-up question. I think I heard a consensus about not granting street closures, and since that goes through me, is that the consensus of the council? No street closures?
I think that's a public safety issue, I
Okay.
think.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, especially with the fireworks. It's going to be.
All right. Next item on the agenda is council updates. So, staff, do we have anything for council? Chief? No. Jim? No. Laura? Ryan? Cheryl? No. Guns?
Yes, the Utility Advisory Commission usually held the first Thursday of the month. I'll be attending the KMU meeting this week. So the meeting has been rescheduled for the second Thursday of the month. Will be May 11th.
Very good. Scott?
Yeah, I just wanted to let everybody know, I guess in addition to the citywide garage sale this weekend, we are hosting, with Grand Slam Baseball, hosting the Bubba Starling Baseball Classic, and we will have about 70 teams in town, and Celebration in West Side should be pretty packed. So anyway, just wanted to make sure that got out there.
Okay, very good.
Did they just, I saw something in the newsletter that you would just replace the surface out at West Side on some of those fields. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've replaced some the surface out of Celebration because we have a lot of rainouts, and then now we're using a cheaper, different kind of ag line mix, which is typical throughout the entire metro, but it can take quite a bit of rain, and so we're just doing that out at West Side just because it has grade and drainage issues anyway, and so
Sure.
it just it'll stick for a while. So
Good.
it's not the best in the world, but it solves our problem for now.
Okay, great, thanks.
Larry?
Just a couple of short things. We had 5 people interested in fireworks last year and had 5 stands, and they all said they'd be back this year, but I've only received 1 application to date. But we had 2 additional people that are totally separate from the first 5 that have expressed some interest, so you could have as many as 7 if they all come back in this year. The other item is staff's been made aware and has been working with Gardner Township looking at a request that they have made earlier this year to receive some budgetary assistance from the city of Gardner to help offset some of their costs to run the cemetery. We've done some research on that, and we have some numbers for that. I would hope to bring maybe a recommendation to you, budget-wise, to you at the next meeting. There's quite a few little things to look at as far as trying to figure out what the value of that is. I don't think there's any question that, of course, there's value to assisting the township. It's just a question of what level does the city want to continue to do that at. So we'll be bringing you a recommendation based on their request and some mill levy information at the next meeting.
Very good.
All right.
Mr. Kramer?
Evening. Wanted to thank Roger for coming out and saying nice things, but it's really a staff effort and a citywide effort. Yes, just to get a porta potty out there, but that was actually done under Parks and Rec's contract, and the airport will be taking care of it. But so thank you to Scott and his staff for doing that. Wanted to mention we do have Streets Committee meeting tomorrow evening. It'll be at the Senior Center at 7 o'clock. And then had 2 projects bid last week that we received pretty good bids on. We'll be evaluating those and then bringing them to council soon for approval. And that was on the property demolition out at the airport, for the Paulson home, and then also for the 2 pedestrian bridges. And then the last thing I wanted to mention and bring up and discuss a little bit was the gateway signs to the city. We've been looking at that and looking at past correspondence and what has been done and talking with KDOT some about those sign locations. And the existing 2 signs on US 56 at either end. So basically, and this was told to us quite a while ago, and it's meaning over a year, and then just repeated to me here recently from the KDOT Metro engineer that improvement or replacement of the existing signage is not permissible at this time. And what it boils down to is KDOT and the Federal Highway Administration trying to work out a policy for this type of sign. And so, being good engineers, we like policies on things, and the Metro engineer has assured me that we're not the only folks affected by this, and that they are working on it. With that being said, my suggestion, at this time, we have our Main Street PSP study going on. I talked to them and talked to the committee about, as we're doing this, looking at wayfinding, looking at where folks would like to see signage, where they think it's necessary. And so I'm thinking, in my terms, we figure out where ultimately do we want the signs. And previously, Brian had looked at, the former Public Works Director had looked at sites on I-35 itself, and then also, other locations along US 56, I believe. And the locations along I-35 are not so much governed by the policy as that's being developed currently with KDOT, as they are just a procedural relationship between KDOT and FHWA, where we would make application and then they would move it forward with FHWA. So they're a little bit different between the 2 types of highways. But that being said, with spending that kind of money, we want to make sure that it's value and that it's going where folks would like to see it and where it'd do a lot of good. And so I would propose to maybe put a placeholder in the budget for a sign But at the same time, really take a look at the wayfinding and where signs make good sense. And now, the existing sign itself, I think if we wanted to repaint it with its current configuration, which is, 2 legs and a sign, we can get the thing repainted and at least get, a current logo up there. But beyond that, I don't think KDOT's going to allow us to do any improvements whatsoever.
I'd rather have a repainted sign with the current logo than have
Yeah.
what we currently have there with 2 logos back,
Yeah.
myself.
Logo, Blazing New Trails,
So-
Welcome to Gardner, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a minimal cost, that's something that you could
Yeah,
handle
that's
yourself,
something that I
right?
think we can get taken care of.
Yeah.
But it'd be a definite improvement, but pretty minimal.
Is there anybody on council that disagrees with going ahead and tidying the signs up?
I'd rather get that done.
Let's tidy the signs up.
Yeah, we'll try and get that done and hope that KDOT doesn't yell at us too much.
I'm just wondering how the heck Olathe got their big monument sign on. Like
Yeah,
I think that was before,
That's before that was before the conflict, or
probably.
or did it cause the conflict?
Yes.
It's not the rest of the state kind of takes a dim view when Johnson County does something big like that, so.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, all right.
Thanks, Michael.
Anything else? Council have anything for staff? Lee Moore, anything?
Nope.
We all, I think, probably got a letter from Mayor Roberts in Edgerton about 191st Street. I didn't know how we wanted to proceed with that, or if we wanted to give staff some direction on that.
I didn't really.
Yeah.
I just got it tonight, so.
Actually, I didn't know who all got copied, and actually, when I looked at the copy, that didn't show any of the council members receiving it. So what I did was I gave my copy to the city administrator and suggested that her and the chief of police and Public Works need to get together, and I'd like to
Okay.
rope in on that. But Jeff, we can, and my guess is we can probably update, well, and probably city attorney as well.
Yeah.
We can probably update somebody on the,
Okay.
update us in the next Friday Minute Memo.
And then another thing, and this was just something that happened to me, and I thought I'd bring it to the governing body's attention. I think we all know I have an RV, and I had parking in front of the house. It broke, and I ordered the parts to fix it, and like anything, the parts weren't coming in. So I sat there because it didn't have headlights, and the headlights were coming, and they ended up not coming, and I ended up fixing it, but it sat there for more than the 48 hours. I couldn't really move it without headlights. I mean, I'm either going to get a ticket for having it sitting there or driving without headlights. It's which ticket do I want? So I almost got to come see court. It would have been fun. I could have said, hey, I've been there. But needless to say, I was able to, get some stuff done so I can move it for temporarily while I'm waiting on the parts. But it did bring up something that I think it would be good for us to look at for citizens, if nothing else, to be able to buy a permit for a 5-day, to let not only my neighbors know, but the city that, hey, look, I need a 5-day extension on this. I'm willing to pay money for it, versus paying for a ticket. And that way, at least everybody knows, hey, look, I know this is not allowed normally, but it's a extenuating circumstance to get it done. So I didn't know what the governing body's thoughts were on that, because I know I'm not the only person that's going to have this problem where at some point parts aren't going to be available. So
The only thing that I would wonder is who's going to make the decision on whether or not the extension is granted, or is it just going to be granted for anybody that wants one?
I would say that would be the way to do it. And Larry's team over there issues permits every day, so.
Yeah, but not for RVs.
If it's the police department, whoever it is, it's just, I would say that the requirements would be, if it's gonna be parked on the street, you need to show us you got proof of insurance and what you need it for, and if it's 5 days and it's $35 or whatever it ends up being, it's, at least the city's getting something out of it, and we know that there's an incentive to get it done and move it on.
I was going to ask, this is a one-time extension. This is not
Well, I
5
wouldn't
days
say
and
you
another
could do
5
it every
days
week.
and another
I mean,
5
because,
days.
yeah, it'd be cost prohibitive. You could go park it somewhere else for $35 for 5 days. Like, you can park out at Olathe Ford RV for $100 a month.
If there's space.
Yeah, for the space. So to me, I just, thought of, this is, and that's the cost prohibitive part of it. What's a ticket for something like that, Chief? Do you know right off the top of your head? Okay.
Could you not have called the city and said, hey, this is the situation? And
Well, it's written in that we have 48 hours. So even if I call the city, and like when the officer came out, I said, well, can I move it? And they go, well, technically you can move it, but it's still been parked there, so. So even if I moved it 3 feet forward or backward or whatever, it's still parked in the same, on the street. It's been there for more than 48 hours. So the real fix was, I got to leave for 24 hours, and then I can come back. So, and I mean, I have parking that I use Olathe Ford RV. I park my RV there all the time, but it's just for that mechanical repair, I needed it to be where I could get underneath there without all the dirt and everything. So your thoughts?
So it would be basically ask staff to come up with a permit
Yeah, I mean,
and
that'd
a
be
policy,
my-
and then
I
we
mean,
can vote on it. And
You want consensus for that, correct?
That's correct.
Get consensus, it looks like.
I'd be willing to look at a possibility, but again, we'd have to have it pretty narrowly written, and I don't think I'd want extensions. I don't want like a second and third request back to back. You get one time and then.
Is it once a month or is it
No.
once? I mean, you tell me. That or tell staff.
What I'm
yes.
thinking is that we'd have one, like a 5-day extension, up to 5
Right.
days. And then,
Is it once a year or is it once a month?
Sergeant, you look like you're going to say something.
I don't have the book with me, but I believe
Sure.
part of the issue is I don't think we allow RVs to be parked inside the city limits other than to empty them and
For the 48
replenish them and
hours,
move them
correct.
on.
that was a 48
The
hours.
same as you would have with a semi.
Correct.
Tractor. We allow the drivers to bring their rig in, ideally not the trailer, but their tractor,
Sure.
so that they can clean it out, repack and whatnot. 48 hours, I'm not sure what that is. We have a separate ordinance for inoperable vehicles, inoperable or disabled, which basically means you have X number of hours that you can leave a vehicle in one place at one time. And if it doesn't move after that, then it's considered, if it's out on a city street, then we have to look at whether or not it actually is operable. Does it have, flat tires, leaky oil, things like that, an expired license plate. As far as Mr. Melton's vehicle goes, the RVs, I believe, are in a separate category, and other than just coming in to load and unload, I think they have to be moved on. And I'd have to check the book to make sure.
Thanks, Sergeant, appreciate that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Sergeant. So that changes anybody's opinion.
I mean, I guess the only thing that I would say is, to Sergeant Benz's point is, in that case, you would fall under so the permit, I'm assuming, is for an inoperable vehicle specifically, not necessarily a permit to waive the 48 hours of the RV.
Well, I don't know, because it was operable. It was just not legal, I guess, on the road. That or without headlights at that point. I don't know. I mean,
technically, you weren't loading or unloading. You were-
right. I was
Right.
actually working on it, and that when what happened was the headlight brackets broke, and I had to fabricate new ones. So it took. By the time I found out there wasn't any headlights available, and I'm making from. Okay, I got to get this out and on here, which you guys can imagine is difficult sometimes for me.
Okay.
So are we asking staff to bring us something back or what? I don't really have an opinion here, so.
Well, I think we need some clarification as to what the existing code says about parking RVs, period. It sounds
Well, let's-
like, it sounds like we can't really park RVs on the street.
Cheryl, here's what I'm going to suggest. I'm going to suggest you talk with Business and Economic Development Department, Police Department, Codes Enforcement people, find out exactly where we are on all this, and be prepared to discuss it as part of council updates at the next meeting.
This
Fair
is-
enough?
Yeah, this
Sounds
is,
good to me.
Okay.
And that's all I got.
thanks, Rich.
No? Steve?
I did have something about, I'd had some discussions. A couple of building contractors contacted me, folks that were doing infill in existing subdivisions, residential development. And they're having a real problem, struggle, I should say, with how to reconcile, basically how to address permits and building standards for lots that are already platted and approved, and they were platted and approved under the old land development code. And so, you know, the initial plat, the designs there, these are not unplatted lots. These are ones in existing subdivisions that just hadn't had a house built on them. And I think we'd had previous discussions about certain issues about this. One is sidewalks, how we manage the sidewalks to retain the character of the subdivision. But there are other things, such as driveway widths, street trees, facades, things like that. We also talked about coverage as well in some of these subdivisions, and how do we manage that? Because there are developments in this city that are 3/4 developed, 4/5 developed, and there's like 10 or 15 lots left, and those lots are being held to a different standard than the other lots in the subdivision, and it creates an inconsistent look, basically. That's what the concern is of the developers that have reached out to me and talked to me. And so is there any way that we can get consensus from the governing body as to how to proceed with infill development in these subdivisions? I'm not talking about new subdivisions. That's all under the new code. And we understand that, and I think the building contractors understand that as well. How do we manage the 8 to 10 lots that might be in these oddball subdivisions that were started by another company or another developer and then shut down for the recession, and now they're being filled in again?
Can I get an opinion from the Business and Economic Development Director?
Sure.
Larry?
It's an interesting subject, and it's a hard question to answer easily because every subdivision has different size lots. They're building different size homes. We're best trying to handle this actually on a one-on-one basis right now. We have met with many of the developers individually, continuing to meet with them. Whenever we have an issue with a particular lot, we have tried to find ways to resolve those differences. We've done so by modifying some of the ways we figure those percentages. We've gone back to our consultant and said, we're having these kinds of issues, how do we address them? So I think we're actually trying to address those now within the existing new code. I don't think we can actually backtrack to pre-August of last year for some of these because you have to start a new code sometime, and we're trying to do that as we go along. We've really only had, and I would be interested in, out of this meeting, if you were to let me know who I need to talk to, if I haven't already talked to them. We've addressed 4 different developers individually, some of them twice with different issues. Sometimes it was driveways and sometimes it's percentage of lot coverage.
Correct.
And to try and address, not talk technical stuff, but when we're talking about lot coverage, we're talking about the size of the house in direct relationship to the size of the lot.
The ratio.
And so we're only doing, and we've only done 30% lot coverage for a long time. So that's actually a percentage that was in the old code. That didn't change. What's changed is the market has changed, so the type of house that they're trying to build, most of them now are 3-car garages. Well, you've increased the total size of the structure enough that you're pushing that 30% into 31, 32, 33. And we've gone back to the land development code consultant. And the first thing we did is we've pulled back we were doing by roof size. Well, now we've gone back to the foundation. So we've pulled in 2 to 3 feet, depending on the size of the soffit around the house, as the impermeable surface, giving us the 30% figure. So we've already made that adjustment. We've tried to make other adjustments as developers have brought us these issues. But some of it is the fact they're just trying to build a bigger house now than they were building 20 years ago. And it's not so much that the lots aren't still good lots, it's just they're trying to put bigger homes on them. And it's a tight fit. But we are trying to address it individually, so I'd be happy to talk to you and see if there are people that have brought things to your attention that we're not aware of. We've also one of the suggestions that one of our developers made to us was that we try and hold some monthly meetings and invite developers in and discuss these issues. And so we've been working on that. We found that developers are very busy. They really don't have time for a group meeting. But they have been meeting with us individually and talking to us on the phones a lot. So we feel like we're getting that word out.
Okay.
It's just a continual process of education. Also, as these new developments are coming in, we are making sure that we talk about the new land code requirements, so that as they are developing the size of the lots that are going into the subdivision, that they're creating enough space in those lots to be able to build these bigger homes.
Yeah.
And it's not that much different. I mean, our average lot requirement is 8,000 square feet, and that's what most of these existing lots are at. Some of them range up to 9, maybe 9,300 square feet. But when you're building a 3,000 square foot house on an 8,400 square foot lot, you're going to have issues. And we already adjusted setbacks to give them more room. We went from 9 feet to 7 feet, and you guys approved that. And we've made other adjustments as we've gone along. So I think we're really trying to address the issues as we go along. But I do appreciate them talking to you, bringing them to our attention, because these are some things that can be worked with. And the code is a living document, and it can be adjusted as we go along.
Sure.
So I'll be happy to meet with you afterwards.
I think there was something else. Really, the discussions that I had with this one particular builder had to do with overall subdivision aesthetics. So you have certain parts of the subdivision that are treated under an old standard, and you've got other parts of the subdivision that are treated under a new standard. Like, for example, the ratio of street trees to square footage on the curb, for example. Well, there are no street trees in any other part of the neighborhood, so now you're talking about putting street trees in one lot, and all the other lots around it don't have street trees because they weren't under the old code. They weren't required under the old code. Things like that. That's just one example, but I mean, it just kind of makes for kind of a choppy look in the subdivision, and how will we manage that? So we can talk about it offline though. All right.
Okay. Steve, anything else?
That's it from me.
Okay. Scott?
No, I just had 2 things. First, Parks and Rec, great job at Earth Day. A lot of positive comments from people that participated, even on a rainy weekend. And then the other question I have is more around budget, and Larry's discussion about the cemetery actually brought this up. So one of the things that I want to make sure, I think that there's the survey that we did on the budget was brief, and I don't have a problem one way or another, but I do think that there's going to be discussion topics that come up. Gardner Cemetery is a good example of that I want to make sure that we allow enough communication and time for public input into some of these, and education of the public on some of these topics, so that people understand kind of the history, the benefits, the cost associated with it, and not just be presented with something and be expected to kind of, we can give our general direction, we can do that, but for instance, if that comes up May 15th, I really want the public to be able to provide their feedback after that, rather than on the 15th just say yes or no. if that makes any sense. So somehow, just so that we can kind of coordinate some of those discussions. And I know there's going to be other things that kind of align with that, but I just want to make sure that throughout this, if something's being presented, that then we have at the next meeting, time for the public to weigh in on some of this information, or even send correspondence to the council members. So that was it.
All right. I wanted to hats off to the Parks and Recreation Department. It looks like pool passes, because of the new initiatives, is pre-sales have gone up fourfold. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I don't know if you were coming in today, but you probably saw the long line.
Yeah.
It's probably more even still more. Well, fantastic. I think that's great and well done on that. And sticking on the Parks and Recreation theme, I was at the Big Bull Creek Park groundbreaking over the weekend. It was soggy and cold, but it's going to be a heck of an amenity. 2,000 acres, a 500-acre, what is it, prairie experience. Looks like it's going to be really nice. So nice to see Jeff Stewart out there helping turn some dirt. So Gons, I'll be seeing you in Wichita later in the week for the Kansas Municipal Utilities Annual Conference. So if nobody else has anything, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is executive session.
Let's start with that, John.
All right. I'd entertain a motion to enter executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Shute, second Melton, that we enter into executive session, recess into executive session, to discuss personnel matters relating to non-elected personnel. Recess beginning at 8:31, returning to regular session at 9:01. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? We stand in recess.
Yeah, it is. 2 minutes off, actually.
Kim, we good?
Yes, sir.
And entertain a motion to resume regular session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Melton, second Harrison, that we resume regular session. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We're back in regular session. Would entertain a motion to enter into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Shute, second Melton, that we enter into executive session to discuss personnel matters relating to non-elected personnel. Recessing at 9:03, resuming regular session at 9:48. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention? We stand in recess.
Second.
And entertain a motion to resume regular session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Moore, second Shute, that we resume regular session. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We're back in regular session. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Harrison, second Moore, that we adjourn. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned.